egalitarian system. Okay, so the egalitarian system indicates that the man and woman should have exactly the same roles and responsibilities, whereas the complementarian system says that's not the case. There should be different roles. So the Islamic premise is as follows: is that equality in value does not mean identicality in roles. And we do affirm equality in value, by the way. And the Quran is very clear about that. You know, the Quran states that God does not put to waste any action of you from man or woman that both of you are from one another. So there is a spiritual and human value equality between man and woman. However, how that manifests itself in the familial sphere, in the social sphere, in the economic sphere, may be different. So going back to the point of polygyny, which is the idea that one man can marry more than up to four women, and a woman can only marry one man. Yes, this is a difference, and it indicates inequality. But it doesn't defy the premise that we've mentioned, which is that equality of value does not mean identicality in roles. So we say that this is something that is a responsibility that can be given to men in certain circumstances, which actually has a net effect. Pardon?
Which circumstances?
In the normal circumstance, unless otherwise stated. Like, for example, if a woman states, I don't want to be in such a relationship, and she puts that in her contract before the marriage, then that, in my view, and this is the view of the Hanbali school of thought, that has to be respected, because Muslims have to be compliant to their contracts. However, if that is not put in place, then the polygynous relationship is actually something which we believe is justifiable. Why so? I mean, because of physiological, psychological, and anatomical and biological difference between man and also because of an ability for men to do certain things that women cannot do. Chief most among which is protection. And although one will say, well, we don't need protection in our modern time or whatever it may be, this is, we believe, a false premise. And in fact, if I were walking with a woman in the street, whoever that woman may be, unless she was Ronda Rousey or something, if I were, and even if it was her, with all due respect, you know, if I were walking with a woman in the street, and in an Islamic paradigm, if some threat came out from without, an extraneous threat, in the Islamic understanding, I would have to actually put my life on the line for that one. So I'm a full-time security guard for her. Now, this is not, the same kind of responsibility is not commissioned to her, okay? And as such, because the ability for man to protect women is so much more pronounced than the opposite, and has been throughout civilization, then there is allowance there. So in sum, therefore, I say that, number one, equality of value does not mean identicality in roles. We believe in a complementarian system, that the polygynous system is in line with the physiological and anatomical and biological differences. And moreover, I would say, and that's just on this point,
and even sociologically.
Yeah.
If you look at all the civilizations that have existed, you will find that out of 130, I think.
This is a good point. Actually, what he's mentioning is a good point, because most anthropological studies show that 85 to 95, and I know it sounds like we're making this up, but you can check this up, yeah? 85 to 95, depending on what source you consult, of human society, pre-modern age, they permitted polygyny with an N, meaning one man, many women.
And you won't find two societies the opposite way, where females have multiply of men.
Only two. I know these societies exist, but I think it's more than two now.
It's not, it's two. It's the one, the Mongolian, South Tibet. That, and then another one.
There's one in South America.
Oh, okay, interesting.
There are some matriarchal society, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. So does that help on the? Yeah. Any questions on this point?
Kind of. Yeah, like a lot of the reasons that people told me is like because back in the day, like when Muhammad was alive, like there was lots of wars going on, and like men would I've kind of forgotten what it is, but it's like,
or
like
men
just
will
like that
outstrip women in terms
exactly.
of, in terms
like,
or the women will outstrip men in terms of population numbers and all that.
So how is that gonna like be transferred to like?
Yeah, that's not the reason. That's a false reason. That's an attempt to try and make an argument about, because look, in Islam you have a ruling. It's called a hukm, okay? And then you have two things. Actually, you have two types of ruling. You have what you call ta'abbudi rulings, these are rulings with no reason. Like, why do we pray 4 units of prayer rather than 5? Why do we pray 5 times a day rather than 6? There is actually no reason given in the Sharia, right? We believe as Muslims that we are to submit to the rule of God, the wisdom of God, right? And there are other rulings which have a reason. Now, there's 2 types of reasoning. There's what you call the causative reasoning, which is called the illah, and then you have the hikmah, or the wisdom. So what this person has tried to tell you is a potential wisdom of why polygyny is allowed. But this is, I think, a false wisdom, because polygyny would still be allowed if the population of men exceeded the population of exactly. If you had a society where there was more men than women, it's not as if now polygyny will be will no longer be a ruling, allowable. So this is not, it's a false, it's a misconception, or it's something which people say because they try and make Islam commensurate with an egalitarian feministic understanding of the second wave of feminists. But the truth of the matter is that this is it's not actually the reason. We don't know what the reason is because it's not mentioned. It's not told us. The Quran doesn't say polygyny is allowed because of X, Y, Z. The wisdoms can be elaborated and speculated. And argued for. I mean, we could talk about that.
There's no like literal definition.
And to be completely fair, I'm telling you this myself. Polygyny can sometimes be advantageous, and sometimes it can be totally disadvantageous. Sometimes it can be beneficial, and sometimes it can actually be harmful.
And
and the Quran actually allows for that possibility by saying,
if you can be equal to
then if you can't be just, then marry only one.
But doesn't it say that it's not possible to be just?
Yeah, and so it gives you advice. It says, فَلَا تَمِيلُوا كُلَّ الْمَيْلِ. It says, وَلَن تَسْتَطِيعُوا أَن تَعْدِلُوا بَيْنَ النِّسَاءِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتُمْ. That you will never be able to be just with the female, with all your wives, and even if you try. So it gives you advice, practical advice. فَلَا تُمِيلُوا كُلَّ الْمَيْلِ. So don't literally go on one direction. In other words, give one woman all the attention. فَتَذَرُوهَا كَالْمُعَلَّقَةِ. So you leave the other one suspended. Which means that there's going to be mistakes that are made, but so long as you try and control the variables as much as you can, then that's the practical advice.
I read a commentary on that verse, and it was saying that when it says you will never be just in terms of the love and affection, that you can't control who you're going to have more affectionate and intimate relationship. Are you feminist yourself?
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say I'm
exploring.
Not really.
With those gloves, I thought.
I still.
You're just acquiring.
So this is, I would say, another thing I would say is this, right? I want to spin this around a little bit. A lot of people say that polygyny is an institution which privileges the man. But I think,
what the Quran would say, what a lot of people probably tell me is that it's actually to benefit the woman, like in the way to protect the woman and like this. I don't know. For me, it depends on the situation, on like where you're gonna live or like what situation you're in anyway. Like if you're in a fully Islamic society, then why would you need to be so protected, or like why would you need to if you're in an Islamic society where everyone's practicing Islam in the proper way, then a woman surely doesn't need to be protected by a man.
No, because here's a huge misconception, and this might sound to even Muslims, it might sound a bit odd. If Islam was implemented perfectly in its entirety, and there would still be a miscarriage of justice. Okay? We believe that if Islam was, let me just mention this again, this point again. If Islam, the rules of Islam were implemented absolutely perfectly, in a utopian imagination, and the ruler was perfect, and the people were I'm not going to say the people were perfect, but the people were there, and the rules were implemented perfectly, yet there would still be a miscarriage of justice. The reason why is because the rules are not meant to produce perfect results. We believe in an eschaton, which is which means the afterlife, right? So we believe in the day of judgment. In other words, the day of judgment is a forum wherein which all the injustices will be righted, all the wrongs will be righted. So because people by their nature are imperfect, there will be people that get away with injustice in the world, even if the Islamic ruling was perfectly implemented. Let me give you an example. In Islam it says that if you, like for example, I'll give you a very controversial example, okay? There's abstractly, classically, there's a death penalty for those who cheat on their spouses, man and woman. It's exact rule, right? But if a man goes into his house and he sees another man with his woman, literally having intercourse with her, yeah? He's not allowed to do anything. Now, the Quran actually tells you what you have to do.
What do you mean he's not allowed to? In the Quran, he's not allowed to.
Yeah, Islamically, from an Islamic, he's not allowed to try and exert vigilante justice. I'm not saying he will or he wouldn't. That's a different story, you know. But Islamically, he's not allowed to do anything. He's not allowed to get physical. He obviously can divorce her, finish the relationship. That's it. Yeah. Now, what happens? The Quran says you have to do something called mula'ana, which basically is that they go back and forth and in front of a judge, and they say that basically you're lying, and then the woman has the last say. The woman, literally the woman wards off any punishment of her if she says, if she testifies 4 times or whatever. There's the process. Now, that means that this man has to live knowing that another man came into his house and had intercourse with his wife on his own bed, where he bought the bed and he bought the house and he, you know, all that stuff. He has to live with that now. Now, in a sense, that is a miscarriage of justice. I can give you another example which affects women as well. I'm not being, but in a sense, that's a miscarriage of justice from the Islamic perspective.
Why would that be written in the Quran if the Quran is supposed to like create a kind of perfectly just society?
It's not. The Quran doesn't.
Well, it's not written, but it's like a.
What I'm saying is, because there's an evidentiary bar, which sometimes people will get away with certain things, that even if we consider all of the things are being perfectly followed according to the Quran, it's still conceivable that there can be miscarriages of justice. And in that case, the case is literally deferred to the eschaton, to the day of judgment, which we believe every little thing that anything has ever done to anybody, any little thing that anyone has ever done to anybody, that will be weighed and it will be recompensed.
And that's also, if I may, there are certain examples in history, Western particular history, people like Robert Owens, for example, they were so utopian, like, industrialist, who then moves to like sort of the New World, America, and builds this utopia, and it doesn't last 5 years. So like this, I think it's to do with the limitations as well of the human ability and possibility to be perfect at all time, because it's almost impossible to be perfect at all time. Because we're not omnipresent, we're not omnipotent to be everywhere and pass judgment that this is always just. So it's inbuilt almost that we will fail.
Is the law perfect?
Yeah, so we would say the law is as perfect as it can be in the world, right? But it doesn't produce perfect results.
So it allows for injustice.
It allows for. It's conceivable that Islamic law can be implemented fully, and injustice can still happen. And if that wasn't inconceivable, then there would be no need for the Day of Judgment. So we believe, absolutely. Like for example, the munafiqun, the ones who didn't believe in Islam, the hypocrites. It's unjust in a sense that they were allowed to continue existing in that society in the way that they did. But their case will be deferred on the Day of Judgment. But like the example I gave you is probably a better example. Now, the point I'm making is, in short, therefore, we have to look at what Islam says, what the premise of Islam is, when it relates to things like polygyny, when it relates to things like the rules, because a lot of what people do is they bring in their kind of foreign ideas, which for us are foreign, right? So Western ideas, Enlightenment ideas, and they superimpose. That becomes the barometer for what becomes mainstream acceptability or the normative or whatever it is. And if it doesn't comply with that, then it's not compliant. It's not true. But that's, for me, that doesn't have creedal disproving implications. So just because something is not compliant with second wave feminism, it doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm trying to say? Just because something is not...
I don't think we need to bring feminism into it, because no,
of course. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
I don't think that's always
for example,
like,
right.
people's opinions or whatever. So.
Yeah, or liberalism. No, I'm just mentioning it because not because of you, but because it's a powerful ideology which is widespread in the West.
Yeah.
It's dominant in the West. Like liberalism is dominant. It's a dominant ethic in the West. And so just because something is not in line with liberalism, it doesn't mean it's not true.
Yeah.
First we have to prove that liberalism is true or false, or whatever ideology we're talking about is true or false or doesn't. So in terms of now going back to the basis, do you believe in God?
Yeah.
Okay. And how would you classify, how would you refer to your own kind of theological belief then? How do you believe in God? Do you believe that?
What do you identify as?
Yeah, what do you identify as? Let's put it that way.
I'm a Quaker.
Quaker?
Oh, a Quaker.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're Christian?
Yeah, but I would never really call myself a Christian. I'd call myself a Quaker. Like, I feel like that's actually a big difference. But
I've never met a Quaker before. I've only read about them in historical aspects.
Oh, right, yeah.
Now we've got one guy that comes here as a Quaker as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up like in like a Quaker household, like Quaker values and stuff. And in Quakerism, like you can believe in God and you cannot believe in God, like, which is why I wouldn't really call it Christianity.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, but not Quaker Christians or so.
They are a part of Christianity, like that's how they started. But like Quakers are not really. Now they've kind of more turned into like a philosophy or like a belief system.
Okay, interesting. Now, so I want to ask you a question then. To what extent do you believe that Jesus is God?
I don't really.
You don't know. All right. So you believe in one God. You don't believe Jesus is God. Have you read the Prophet Muhammad's life? Because you were talking about it. So what are your impressions on that?
Yeah, I think it's nice. I think it's.
Did you read Tom Holland?
No.
Or Patricia Crowd?
Oh yeah. That's a good. What did you read?
I didn't really read, but I more got told by like my friends, like my Muslim friends. So, like, I read a little bit, but the main knowledge I got was from my friends. But
all right. So the Islamic meta-narrative is as follows, right? So that we believe that there's prophets and messengers that were sent aforetime, like Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Yeah. All of which came with the same message, which is to believe and worship in one God, and not to associate partners with Him. Now we don't, and not to associate partners with God, meaning to make something equivalent to God. So God is the all-powerful one. He's the all-knowing one. He's the creator. You know, He's omnipotent, etc. Right? And nothing is compared to Him. Nothing in creation is compared to Him. And likewise, He should not be compared with anything else. Now, all the prophets and messengers came to tell their people this, and also to tell their people to believe and worship in one God. And by that we mean submit fully to the laws of God. When we say submit fully to the laws of God, that means the revelation that is sent to the messengers and prophets. Now we believe that messengers and prophets were sent with two things. They were sent with a message, which is to worship one God, and they were also sent with some kind of an evidence. Okay, and this evidence is, it could be, in the case of Moses splitting the sea, it could be, bringing his hand out, and it becomes all white and luminous, or it could be throwing the stick and it becomes a snake, and things that you might have read in the Old Testament, which we also believe in. And it could be for the case of Jesus, that He cured the blind with God's permission, that He raised the dead with God's permission, that He walked on water, although that's not in the Quran, but it could be all those things, right? Now, having said this, we believe that the Prophet Muhammad, his evidence was the Quran itself, so that it can be analyzable for people in all times and all places. Because had it been something which was localized, then we wouldn't have had access to it in the same way as the primary audience would. And so the evidence that the Prophet Muhammad had to come with was evidence that had to be analyzable by people in all times and places. And so we believe, for example, that the Quran has no contradictions. And in fact, the Quran is the only religious book that I know of that even challenges people to find contradictions in it, which is a necessary condition for something to be the word of God. In addition to not having contradictions, we believe